So today we're going to do pagination and basic searching. Um, and when I say basic searching, what I'm referring to is a really cut down, simplified version of search. So we're not going to be doing searching across all of the domain models. What we'll be doing is searching across only one domain model at a time. This is pretty easily achieved by scopes, which is something we'll be having a look into with a gem called has_scope. But first we get cracking with pagination. If you don't know what that is, you would have seen it. It's basically just the pages that data gets split into. So when you see down the bottom of a website or something, it'll be like page 1, page 2, page 3, that kind of thing. That's pagination. I've done a little bit of work on the application behind the scenes, just to kind of clean it up and make it a little bit more presentable, not too much. So just kind of giving it a sign in button with a bit of a Google logo to kind of prompt the user that, hey, this is sign in with Google. Got rid of some of the stuff that's not really relevant, like registration, which we don't actually handle or support. So we'll go ahead and sign in and so, here's the data that we already have. So to make use of pagination, realistically you need a lot of data, or at least some data, maybe like 15, 20 records, something like that. So we're going to go ahead and make a bunch of forums. We can do a sort of through the UI if we really wanted to. Something kind of stupid and a bit manual, or we can do it using loops and learn a little bit more about how you can use arrays. So let's open the Rails console. So what we want to do is basically have maybe like a prefixes array, something like let's do a hipster theme. Quinoa, yeah, spelling that's always fun. Kale, Fixie, espresso. Other stuff are they super into? Yeah, that'll do. Then we're going to make a suffixes array, something like single origin, single malt. Before it was cool. You probably haven't heard of it. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, let's roll with that. So what we're going to do is we're going to loop through maybe like 20 times or something and create a bunch of forums with a prefix and a suffix. The description will keep the same. The description is always going to be something like hipster Ipsum, which I believe I have in Sublime somewhere. I do hipster Ipsum. Oh, it doesn't work. Okay, it's generally meant to put out some lorem ipsum style stuff like this, but hipster related. So what we're going to do is do something like for I in let's do maybe like 50-ish. We will create a forum which has a title. Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, it's title of remembering this is string interpolation. I'm going to do this, prefixes.sample, and what sample says is go and randomly choose an element from this array. And then we're going to do suffixes.sample. So we'll get something like, as a random thing, like quinoa single origin, or something along those lines. Then we'll put the description as the description. I believe that's all we need to supply. Yes, it is. So we created like 50 forums, and when we reload the page, we'll see Fixie single malt, Fixie single malt. It's kind of dumb. Kale single malt, Fixie before it was cool, you know, that kind of thing. So you can see here there's a bunch of forums that really go and span the entire page. It's stupid. Doesn't really display all that well. So, Kale, you probably haven't heard of it. All right, let's go and do some stuff with this. So what we're going to do is let's add the gem, Kaminari gem, and we're going to do some RTFM. So we'll add in here Kaminari, add pagination gem for display of longer running model sets. I don't think that needs explanation, so we'll use the Kaminari gem. Bundle install, and we'll do a quick read through. So it says we just bundle install it, and then we're pretty much good to go. So what this is showing us is there's a page method that gets added to every model that is in our Rails application, which we pass a page to. Then we can also supply to it a per, so how many of these instances of the model do we want to return. So in this case, we would say maybe like page 1, and we'll have like maybe 10 forums per page. We possibly don't want forums to be paginated. We probably only want to keep the forums to something like 10 forums in total. But definitely the posts will be paginated, and the kind of threads within those posts will be paginated. Oh, excuse me. Right, so if you read a little bit further down, it does actually show you that you can, and I would recommend doing this Kaminari config Rails generator, and we've seen this on a couple other things, I believe on the device gem, so we'll go ahead and do that. We've installed the gem, you can see here, Kaminari core and such things. So bundle exec Rails G Kaminari config, and this will create an initializer for us. So we'll have a look at what that Kaminari config does. It tells us that it can set a default per page, so maybe we'll have a default per page of, let's do 20 just so we can change it, just for a laugh. Max per page, don't really care about. Window, none of these really useful or interesting to us, so we're just going to get rid of that. And we'll leave the default per page as 20. So we don't need to set this per any longer. It's just kind of by default. Now it shows you how to override that on a model basis. So we can say, oh, for the user model, we want to paginate it on 50, and for the, well, actually, if we take something more extensible, the comments one, we want to paginate it on maybe like 20 comments, and then on threads, maybe like, how's the domain model work? Our posts, we want to do something like maybe 10 posts per page, and then the comments maybe, actually maybe 10. I'm not sure how forums are usually laid out, and it's kind of a personal preference, and what sort of looks nice at the end of the day. So it kind of shows you a little bit of example code of how you might use this inside of your controller, but let's get cracking and sort of start working with it and see how it might work. So it shows you that you can call this paginate method inside of your view. So we'll add that to our forums index view and see what it does. Where's it going to look sensible? Maybe here, except it should be forums. Saying undefined method paginate for class. Okay, so we haven't quite installed Kaminari perfectly just yet. Let's go back and have a read and see why. It's because we haven't paginated it. So we need to paginate it. We'll do this. Come to our forum controller. I believe the method is paginate. Further up. Much further up. Where is it? Here we go. So we can let's do this for a minute. Page 1. Now it's saying that it doesn't like the page method for the active record relation. So the page method is actually on the model itself and not the active record relation. Now it's saying that it doesn't like having it on the class, so we may actually have to restart our server. This may be the problem. That's a bit better. There we go. Okay, so we needed to restart our server. This is kind of what I was saying about Spring causing some issues. It may have required a restart regardless, but suffice to say, when you add a gem, it's generally a good idea to restart your server. This page method, we can't always have that as one, and it doesn't really make sense. So let's see what happens when we refresh and see what gets kind of passed. We haven't looked too much at this, but this is the Rails output. So when you refresh a page, you'll see that it does started get slash, tells you what it's processing, what stuff it's loading, and it will actually show you the parameters that it passes to it if you pass any parameters. So let's hit the next button. See what it passes. So it actually passes parameters page 2. So right now we're getting page 1. So we want to kind of have this be used as part of this method call. So let's do that the real simple way. We know that we have the params thing, and we know that it's called page. So we can say something like current page. Then we can say params.commit page. And this will give us a hash of params with page inside of it. And then we probably want to index it by page. We can also just do it like this, which is fine. Actually, let's do it like that for the minute. Maybe put it here, since it's a new method. It makes sense to put it there. So page, and we probably want to set this. Excuse me, current page. No, we don't need to do that. Sorry, I'm retarded. This is a method call. We don't need to do any such setting. Although we could do something like current page and then like preset it if we really wanted, but not really necessary. So let's go first. You can see general, fixie, single malt, espresso before it was cool, yada yada yada. And then we hit next, fixie before it was cool, espresso before it was cool. And we can actually see that we've already started paginating the models as the pages change. And that's kind of it. That's sort of really all you need to get rolling with Kaminari. There are ways to change the pagination CSS, so at the minute it kind of looks a bit ugly. It does mention how you can do that somewhere in the documentation from memory. Yeah, different templates for your paginator. You can generate them. So here we go. Rails G Kaminari views default. So let's kind of do that actually. Make it look a little bit nicer. Views default. Yeah, that was right. So it's created a bunch of views for us. We want the paginator container tag. So nav class pagination. Now we want to make this look a little bit more bootstrappy. So we'll come to the Bootstrap CSS framework documentation. Excuse me. Just had dinner. And we know, or I know, and now you know, that there is some pagination code that they have written that makes things look kind of nice. So where was it? It was here. So we can say uses a UL, so uses an unordered list. Pagination class on the unordered list. Now, how does this work? Uses a nav class. So we'd really have to mess with this if we wanted it to work kind of nicely. It's not really all that fun. I feel like if I recall correctly, there is actually a different theme available. Here we go. So there's a theme available, I believe, that uses Bootstrap, so Bootstrap 3. If we wanted to actually regenerate these themes, so we could actually back that out. Let's remove them. Views, Kaminari. Get rid of them. We'll add this gem for a laugh, because it will make things a little bit nicer for us. So we'll close that. Add some themes. Kaminari theme primarily pulled in the Bootstrap. So you can add that. Bundle it. And run it again. So fullest, take a look at the themes. Let's just see there. Okay, so we can do this. Oops. Kaminari themes. It doesn't like us doing this. Well, let's see what happens. What this may have actually been saying is that we may not actually need this. This may not actually be a, well, it doesn't have a gem spec, so this may not be a gem. It might just be a separate repo that is demonstrative. Bundle exec. Search file. Oh, well, that's a little bit annoying. It looks like the gem is having issues. Yeah, this gem is not liking us doing this. So it's saying no such file directory, api.github.com, bloody blah. So the gem's kind of bugging out on us. Let's see if we can see if Spring is causing any issues. So we stopped the Spring gem just in case it's causing the gem to have issues. Unfortunately not. Okay, let's see if we can just use it without having to worry about that. So what we'll do is bundle exec, Rails G Kaminari views, Bootstrap. We're using Bootstrap 3 and hope. Unfortunately not. So that's kind of a pain in the ass. Kaminari is not working out for us in terms of being able to pull these themes down to install. So actually, does it mention anything in here? Nope. We could look at the issues if we really wanted to. No, that's unfortunate. It sounds like their theme no, there's no issues related to the theme. So it seems like the gem's got a problem with it, which means that we're not going to be able to do this. So we'll just leave it as it is, and we can hope and wait that the gem will have the code written to fix it, and we can update the gem a bit later. We can file a defect if we really wanted, but it's not important right now. Okay, so that's pagination. It doesn't take a whole lot of work. There are some sort of more fancy things you can do if you really want to have it like auto paginate, but it's not really necessary right now. So we'll leave that as done and move on to the next thing. So we kind of want to do some like, oops, need to restart the server. We kind of want to do searching now. So come back here, we go to pagination, great. So what we're going to do is look for a gem called hasScope. And actually, before we do that, we should have a little bit of a look into what scopes are. So scopes are ways of, well, actually, let's start like this. We know that we can do something like forum.all. We've seen things like forum.where id sort of 1 or something like that, and we've seen that. What I don't believe we have looked at is something along the lines of forum.where, you know, some condition id greater than 1, oops, id greater than 3, where let's do title is something like this. And this is actually using scopes in Rails. It does look just like regular Ruby methods where we're taking a result and passing the result to another method. And that is true in terms of we are acting on the previous thing's return, but it does have sort of special functions. And we won't go into too much how they work, but the long story short is basically it allows us to chain conditions when querying against the model. So it will go and sort of add all of these conditions to the SQL query that we're executing, and we can actually see that. So if we backspace this, type to SQL, it will show us this is what it's going to do. And then we do this, and it will show us it's kind of tacked it on to the end. So yeah, that's kind of what it's doing. So scopes also allow you to custom define sort of search parameters. So let's do a kind of contrived example. The documentation for this is pretty good. Excuse me. So we'll grab just some example code and come to our forum model, and we'll put in a scope. But this scope is going to be to find all forums whose title, and we've seen sort of these repeat titles, whose title is Fixie before it was called, because that kind of makes sense. And we'll call the scope Fixie Lover, where title is Fixie before it was called. We'll need a space there. So again, don't forget that this is just a method call. This is the name of the scope. So if we were to do something like forum.fixielover, that would be the name of that. And this stuff is kind of sort of the interesting thing. We talked a little bit about blocks. This is kind of another style of block. It's colloquially, or at least kind of fun referred to as a stabby lambda, this arrow being the sort of stabby thing. And a lambda is just basically an anonymous function, so a method that doesn't have a name is kind of the best way to describe it. Wow, if I could type. So it's an anonymous function, and what the function is doing is it's calling that where thing that we've seen before, and it basically it allows us to call this method and kind of substitute in this code. And these things can actually take variables if we really wanted something like, my cool thing, which would then be available inside of here as like my cool thing. But we don't need that. So this will actually give us this scope. So we can say, well, let's do it. Reload. This is a way of reloading the Rails console to pull in all of the latest code. So we can say form.fixie-lover. And you can see here, well, let's kill that and do 2SQL. You can see it has searched for forums where forums title was Fixie before it was cool. So if we have a look at the result set, how many records were returned? About 5 of them, which is cool. So we could create another one that was like created at where, I don't know, something like created at greater than datetime.new 2017. So basically January 1st, 2017. Created this year. Reload that. Created this year. Okay. So the basic idea is that you can change scopes. You can set them and they'll filter and keep filtering until you basically get nothing left. We don't want that though, so we don't need that stupid condition. So we'll leave that as it is and come to the has a scope gem because that's kind of what we want to look into next. So it says it maps incoming controller parameters to named scopes in your resources. So this being a named scope. So what does it say? You can map the incoming controller parameters. Imagine the following model, so we can see that there's got a bunch of scopes. You can use these named scopes by declaring them in your controller. So we can see here it's got this featured scope, and in our controller we say has scope featured, and then type boolean, which is not really all that important, or by degree, scope by degree. Now if you want to apply them to a specific resource, you just call apply scopes. And that's kind of what you would do to do searching. So let's see how this will function. Gem has scope, basic search functionality. Bundle that, kill our server, restart our server, and let's do something like scope, what do we call it? Fixie-lover. So we're doing that has scope thing with the name scope, and then we want to apply scopes to the graduation model. Now since we're doing this, that's pretty much the exact same thing, but what we really want to do is apply scopes to there, and that should work just fine. Okay, and it does, or we assume it does. So how are we going to test it out? We can do it like this. We can just add a query param in our URL and say Fixie-lover. Dear. Didn't like that. Okay, it hasn't executed. Why hasn't it executed? So we're adding Fixie-lover equals nil, so maybe let's try true. Alright, and now we can see that it's actually trying to call the Fixie-lover scope. So this is kind of a bit of a gotcha when you're doing this kind of thing. So let's see, how do I best describe this? When we're passing this in, it's actually taking this value, where have I got it, fixie lover, and passing that to the fixie lover scope, which we know doesn't take any parameters. So that's kind of not really all that useful. We don't want it to do that. So as an example, if we were to take something like one of their scripts, I believe takes, yeah, so their script takes a degree. Actually, do they show an example of how to do it without? Yes, they do. In fact, that should work. And it's a little curious that it does not. That is a little curious. So, according to the documentation, it should work. This should work the way that we are calling it. Although they have set the type on that, so let's try and do it like that. Let's say this is actually a type of boolean. Okay, there we go. It was missing the type. It doesn't. It doesn't automatically figure it out. So you can see here, basically, we've given ourselves a filter. So if we were to remove that, it would return all of the things we want. And we can do kind of cool stuff like see lover. Actually, I don't really want that. I don't want to like that. See lover equals true, which will filter, and then well, if we were allowed per page, we could set this to allow only like one per page, and then it would actually paginate it. But the idea being that we could do something like this per page, and it would like that. It would paginate it as well, so it sort of chains these things together. Suffice to say, that's how you do basic filtering of, or basic kind of searching manually. But we really want to turn this into some kind of like form where we can say, oh, I want to look for you know, something in like a search box style thing, sort of like what we have here. So we need to create at least a scope that takes some kind of information in. So we'll do something like this. We'll create a scope that is like, what do we call it? Title search. By title. Sounds good. And what do we call this? We don't want to call it title. That will shadow the variable. We'll call it something. Let's just call it underscore title for the minute. And I'm going to do something like title like percent title percent. So what this is saying is basically go and find me a title where there's anything before the word that we give it and anything after it. So if we were to give it something like foo as the title, and we have something in the database that's like titled a foo bar, that would work. If we have something that's like foo bar, that would work. Pretty much anything like that. So you know, obviously if it has something like this, it wouldn't match and it wouldn't work. So let's make sure that that works the way we expect. Form.byTitle fix. It does not. We have done silly things. What is it saying? It is syntax error. Where title like percent fix percent. this may be a limitation of SQLite. We may need to look into this. So SQLite is the database that we've been using by default, and it's kind of not really a full-on database. So we may need to look into this. Usually I will be using like MySQL, but today not so much. So their title like we may actually need the quotes here. Okay. With that. Okay, that's better. You needed the quotes. Right. So you can see here it's returned us everything in the title that's got like kind of fix in it. If you want a little bit more of an interesting example, you can do things like E, which will pretty much return almost anything, given E is a very common letter, so 52 of them. Whereas if you do something like A, it will probably return, yeah, quite a lot less. So we have a scope that now at least takes some kind of information. So if we were to do something like by title E, it would actually filter by E, which is really cool. So how do we use that? Well, first we need to scope by title. I don't believe we need to set that to any type. By default, it should probably be string from what we've seen. And we can pretty much immediately test that. Firefox by title. Let's try something like fix. See, it's filtering now, but we want to go a little bit further and actually, you're not going to expect users to be doing something dumb up here. You'll expect them to be doing it, in like a search box or something. So let's make a search box. First thing we want to do, see if Bootstrap has any cool search style components that it gives us by default. Search. No, it doesn't appear to. I had a feeling it did. No. I mean the JavaScript. Does it have anything? No. Okay, that's fine. So we'll create a search form. There's a few ways to do this. It depends on how you want to present the search. Now, I did preface this kind of episode with it's going to be a very basic search capability, so it won't search multiple models at once or anything like that. So what I will say is, for the minute, the way I will show you to do this will be simple as anything, with the caveat that it will only search the title or something along those lines. So we'll create a search form like that, and then we may do a future episode where we either extend upon that and make it kind of do a little bit more, or we go and do something using something called Solar, which is like a pretty advanced search mechanism, but that's a very big investment for something that we're only just starting to learn about. So we will create a search form, and we need a view. So view, say a partial search form, and how do we want to do this? We don't really need to use any of the Rails form for stuff, because that's primarily geared towards spinning up forms related to models. So what we can actually do is steal some Bootstrap. from Bootstrap. Steal some Bootstrap. I feel like they actually have a search example. I'm pretty sure they do. Where is it? Where is it? Because we want like a little magnifying glass in our search form. You know, we want to look kind of fancy. Typography, code, tables. Oh, doesn't matter. We missed it. Actually, this is pretty good. Let's use this. Alright. Except we don't want this double zero kind of garbage at the end, so I'll get rid of that. We'll render the form maybe at the head of the page, the partial search form. Remembering that this is actually saying that, except it's partial. We don't need to pass anything to it. And we've rendered the form. So this, where are we? Dollar. There, okay. We kind of want to output like a magnifying glass. Do we have font? We do have font awesome. What's the font awesome icon for magnifying? I think it's mag, probably. Let's check it out. Let's find out what it is. Is it called search? Yeah, search will do. Pretty sure it's just something like this. Yep, cool. And then we change the placeholder to be ID. We don't need this. This is accessibility stuff. I mean, you can leave this if you want. Basically, this is basically a thing that helps screen readers read out what this form is for, like what it's used for. You know, maybe we don't want to do this. Maybe we want to do it like this instead. Icon search, something like this. And then get rid of that. Don't know which one looks better. Maybe even without search. Kind of everybody knows what magnifying glass means. Yeah. Title. Pretty nice. That looks pretty good. Okay, that's not too bad. Except, so we've given it an ID, but we actually need to give it a name by title. So if we have a look at this, it's got a title name. If you're not familiar with this, input HTML, you can have a look at the HTML input thing, and it's the name parameter on it is how you describe what it is called when the parameters are passed through to whatever handles your form. So if we search by that, it'll search by blank title, which I believe doesn't do any filtering for us. So let's try this. By E, doesn't really do anything. What about by A? And we can see that the thing is changing a little bit. What about Fixie? Yep, so we've started searching by Fixie. We could pre-fill this. So we could say something like, instead of having a placeholder title, we could say params by title, which would actually show us Fixie. Yeah, that kind of looks dumb. Let's leave it as it is. That's cool. And that's pretty much the sum of it. That's how you do basic searching. So you can imagine if you want to do something like, you know, searching by something else, you could do, well, let's do it by description. Description, yeah, great, we'll do that. Change this to description. Change this to, should change the other one at the same time. That's pretty much it. By description. Change this to description. Well, that looks kind of ugly, but general. Okay, so we're filtering just by general. That looks a little ugly. You probably want to fix that up. Maybe instead of form inline, you could do actually, no, that should look pretty good. Why does that not look pretty good? Because it's in, should be cleaner. Remove that because we don't need that. That's better. Let's go with searchable. Now, if you want to do something like resetting it, you could do, you know, a kind of simple way if you really want. The easiest way to do it is to just link to the root route of whatever resource you're using. So in this case, forums path. Call it something like reset. Give it a class of like button default, maybe. Reset it. And then it resets. It essentially navigates back to the slash and removes any of the search parameters. That's kind of the easiest way to achieve like resetting the search field. But that's it. That's kind of all it is to do pagination and searching. It's quite easy when you know the gems that you need to use. And yeah, we'll leave it there for this evening. So I hope this was useful for you guys. My suggestions to you would be to take something like how many records per page is allowed. So you could have a user be allowed to set how many records per page they would like, and try and implement that. It's not a huge amount of extra work. Or you could do extra scoping, or you could sort of look into doing something like Boolean searching on your scopes. So you could, without giving too much away, you could do something like, you know, or description, and I won't go too much further than that, but look into Boolean conditions for searches. So you could potentially get it to do multiple field searches and do a match for you. Without having two fields, you could just make it search pretty much on all of the text fields. You know, there are performance impacts associated with that, but you know, for our purposes, that's kind of fine. Anyway, that's pretty much all I got for you. So I hope this was useful, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.